The movie revolves around a father, Sang-tae, and his teenage daughter, Do-yeon, who reside in a small town in South Korea. Sang-tae loves his daughter a lot and works hard to provide her with a good life, but Do-yeon is a spoiled brat. All she cares about is her reputation at school and her makeup products. Moreover, she tries to avoid her dad the best she can, whether it be at home, while heading to school, or at a relative's house. Sang-tae's wife, Kim, knows about the problem, but she believes that the girl is acting weird simply because of her adolescent phase. One day, Do-yeon's grandfather gets sick, so the family decides to visit him. Even there, Do-yeon ignores her dad and keeps on chatting with her friends. A while later, she gets up and prepares to leave, so Sang-tae is forced to escort her home. Outside, Sang-tae becomes emotional and asks his daughter if he has done anything wrong. He mentions that he works day and night to fulfill her demands, yet she doesn't even see him as a father. Hearing this, the spoiled Do-yeon replies that she is always misunderstood and that it is very hard to be a student. Sang-tae asserts that student life is easy and challenges her to live his life for a day. As the two are arguing, Grandpa pops up out of nowhere and shows his ginkgo tree. He mentions that if one prays near this tree, their wishes can be fulfilled. But sadly, when he turns back, he realizes that no one was listening to him. Elsewhere, Do-yeon and Sang-tae are still arguing on their way back home. As the latter tries to make his daughter understand, he has a tiny lapse in concentration and ends up crashing his car into an oncoming truck. Drinking and driving is one thing, but having shitty kids and driving is the riskiest. When the two wake up at the hospital, they are shocked to find out that their bodies have been switched. It appears as if the magical ginkgo tree switched their positions, something which they were arguing about. Wasting no time, they head to an isolated section of the hospital and try to make sense of the situation. Sang-tae, in his daughter's body, assumes that God has punished them for being reckless, but Do-yeon, in her dad's body, asserts that there has to be a logical explanation behind it. Just then, Sang-tae remembers his doctor friend, Lee, and decides to pay him a visit. The two then escape the hospital and get inside a cab. On the way, Do-yeon calls Sang-tae dad and also keeps acting like a girl. As expected, this confuses the cab driver, and he assumes that the two are mental patients. In the next scene, Do-yeon and Sang-tae arrive at Lee's office, and the latter, who is in his daughter's body, starts pleading for help. "Please, doctor, tell my daughter to give me my penis back." To prove that he is actually Sang-tae, he also reveals some of Lee's darkest secrets. However, instead of believing them, Lee becomes enraged and scolds Sang-tae for divulging their secrets. And, before the father and daughter can say anything, he forces them out of his office. Shortly after, the two reach a pharmacy and again cause a scene there. As a result, they decide to keep their switch a secret from everyone, including their mother. Later, during dinner, Kim serves delicious beef to her family, but Sang-tae can't have it as his daughter is on a diet. On the other hand, Do-yeon, who has never tried alcohol, is forced to drink some when her mother starts suspecting the two. Things go from bad to worse for Do-yeon when her own mother tries to have intercourse with her at night. Fortunately, Kim is so drunk that she falls asleep before any damage is done. This movie is like if Doctor Strange had an Oedipus complex. The next morning, the two get up early and start researching on how to get their bodies back, but sadly, there is no information about it anywhere. After a while, they meet in the basement and blame each other for their woes. Just then, Sang-tae remembers that their creepy old grandpa knows a great deal of stuff about the supernatural. He immediately calls him, and the old man reveals that the switch has been made possible because of the ginkgo tree. He also mentions that although the switch only lasts for a week, Sang-tae and Do-yeon have to be careful, as if they fight again, there will be dire consequences. With this information, the two become relieved, but they still have to go through the entire week, which is extremely important for them. Sang-tae has an important presentation coming up at his workplace, while Do-yeon has been selected for a once-in-a-lifetime audition at a musical club. The audition is extra special because it is taken by none other than her crush, G.O. Hence, they mutually decide to continue each other's lives by learning their respective habits and way of living. "Dad, if you don't kiss that dude, you're gonna ruin my life." Shortly after, Sang-tae and Do-yeon get ready and head to the school and office respectively. On the way, they teach each other how to behave and even replace their phones to look more authentic. When Do-yeon reaches her dad's office, she finds out that he is really unpopular. He works for a cosmetics company and manages a small deadbeat team, which is known as Team Powder, which is apparently about to be laid off due to lack of sales. Among his team are the assistant manager, Jang Won, an irritating but responsible employee, and sales executive Na, a beautiful woman who looks more like a model than a sales girl. A while later, Team Powder has a small discussion where Jang Won tries to explain a presentation, but Di-yeon is busy chatting with her friends. This angers the team as they have an important meeting with a VIP investor, Kwon, that evening. On the other hand, Sang-tae reaches his daughter's school and sits beside the most obedient student in class, Kyung-mi. This confuses everyone, as Do-yeon is notorious for being arrogant and rude to the obedient students. Later, he heads to the auditorium, where the audition to the musical club is taking place. Sang-tae notices his daughter's crush, Ji-oh, and immediately grows a dislike for him. However, when he is called upon the stage to sing, he remembers his teenage years and gets into the groove. Sang-tae, in his daughter's body, grabs a guitar and starts performing a funky song, which impresses all the judges, including Ji-oh. Meanwhile, Team Powder is having dinner with Kwon, and all the members are trying their best to suck up to him so that he will agree to the deal. However, Do-yeon is uninterested in her father's affairs and keeps on using her phone. Witnessing this, a drunk Kwon mentions that he will sign the contract, but only if Sang-tae, i.e. Do-yeon, sings karaoke and scores above 96. Normally, Do-yeon doesn't care about helping others, but since a teen like her is big into karaoke, she immediately agrees. She then goes on the stage and performs a dazzling show, which gets her a near-perfect score of 97. This delights the group, and the contract is secured. At night, the father-daughter duo catches up and briefs each other about their first day. Sang-tae becomes angry when he learns that his daughter danced in front of his team. However, he can do nothing more than smile at her, as quarreling will cause dire implications for them. The following day at school, Sang-tae learns that a class test is going to be conducted the next day, so he requests the obedient girl, Kyung-mi, to help him. At first, Kyung-mi refuses, claiming that she doesn't like socializing with others, but when Sang-tae insists, she eventually agrees. That night, the girls study hard for their test, and promise to get the best grades. Elsewhere, Do-yeon starts bonding with Na over their shared interest in cosmetic items. After a while, she returns home, and finds her dad spending time with her friends. Enraged, she confronts Sang-tae for bringing over her friends, but the latter mentions that it's for their upcoming test. Hearing this, Do-yeon scoffs at her dad and mentions that it's very hard to get good grades. But being the competitive guy that he is, Sang-tae promises that he will top the class. Sadly, during the test, when he checks the question paper, he finds out that he can't answer even a single question. Sang-tae then spends the next hour just coloring his answer paper like a kid. On the other hand, Do-yeon learns from Team Powder that a marketing group is on their way to the office to shoot an advertisement for lipstick. Do-yeon tries to wriggle her way out of the situation, but when Jang-won mentions that their team is leading the advertisement, she has no choice but to get involved. Later, as the entire team gets ready, disaster strikes. The marketing team has met with an accident, so one of the Team Powder's staff will have to face the camera and endorse the lipstick themselves. Both Jang-won and Na are scared of facing cameras, so they refuse to take part in it. Hence, with no options left, Do-yeon, in her father's body, is forced to complete the shoot. To make matters worse, the advertisement's being shot live, on air, with the entire country watching it closely. But, surprisingly, Do-yeon, using her impeccable knowledge of cosmetic items, endorses the lipstick flawlessly and impresses the bosses. However, before she can celebrate, she gets a call from the school, revealing that her father did awfully bad in her text. Enraged, Do-yeon heads straight to the staff room and starts berating her dad in front of the teacher. She even hits him several times, but instead of fighting back, like he always does, Sang-tae simply runs away. Outside, the two reconcile and promise to not mess up each other's lives again. Do-yeon reveals that her crush, Ji-oh, has invited her for a date the next evening, and it is an opportunity that she simply cannot miss. She then pleads with her dad to go on the date and impress Ji-oh. Expectedly, Sang-tae declines right away, claiming that he doesn't even like the boy in the first place, but since Do-yeon is a stubborn girl, she eventually convinces him to date her crush. Sounds like Sang-tae's going to jail. The next evening, Sang-tae and Ji-oh wander around the streets while an anxious Do-yeon stalks them from behind. Soon, Ji-oh takes him to a music store where they start bonding over their common interest in vintage music. After the date is over, Ji-oh and Sang-tae board a bus to return home. Do-yeon also sneaks in, and when she notices her dad very close with her crush, she becomes envious. But when she realizes that at least the date went well, she consoles herself and smiles. It is now day 6 since the switch. It is also the most important day for Sang-tae, as he is supposed to deliver a stellar presentation in front of his boss and the board of directors. It turns out that the fate of the entire Team Powder depends on the presentation, meaning that if Sang-tae doesn't impress the directors, all of them will be fired. Before departing, Sang-tae encourages his daughter for the presentation and wishes her good luck. He then heads to school and waits anxiously for the decisive moment. A few hours later, Do-yeon reaches the office where several investors, the board of directors, and other dignitaries are all waiting. Team Powder also sits in a corner, hopeful that their manager can deliver a powerful speech and save their jobs. At the same time, Sang-tae sneaks out of his class and calls his daughter to listen in on the entire presentation. Soon, Do-yeon commences her speech, and using her vast knowledge of cosmetics, impresses everyone. But just when everyone starts to applaud her, she flips the speech right on its head and asserts that the company's products are too expensive. She mentions that teenagers are not stupid to buy such expensive products, so it would be better to lower the cost for better results. In this way, Do-yeon speaks about the day-to-day problems that she faces while buying cosmetic items. Sadly, the BODs are far from impressed by the suggestion, and they decide to terminate Team Powder with immediate effect. Sang-tae, who is hearing all this from his phone, gets devastated. He immediately runs to the office and confronts his daughter for her stupidity, but the latter shouts at him for never listening to her opinions. She doesn't realize that that's because her opinions are stupid. She then walks away without giving her dad a chance to explain. The next day, Do-yeon again heads to the office and tries to convince the BODs to reconsider their decision. She even gets on her knees and begs them. However, all this simply infuriates the directors, and they request that she go away. Still unwilling to give up, Do-yeon starts chasing after their car, and at the same time, Sang-tae arrives on a bicycle. Sadly, during the commotion, the car strikes the bicycle, knocking Sang-tae out. He is immediately taken to the hospital, where Do-yeon starts crying. She then takes out her phone and starts going through her childhood photos, where Sang-tae is always by her side. That night, the ginkgo tree sheds a leaf, which travels all the way to the hospital, beside Sang-tae's bed. It then performs a special magic, and finally reverts the father and daughter back to their original bodies. Then, Do-yeon dies. I'm just kidding. The next morning, when Sang-tae and Do-yeon wake up, they are ecstatic to have their bodies back. They then hug each other tightly before venturing out of the hospital. In the final scene, Sang-tae gets a call from Jang-won, informing him that the board of directors have reconsidered their decision and reinstated Team Powder. Their salaries have also been increased for their controversial but bold suggestions. The movie ends as Do-yeon and Sang-tae take a selfie together, indicating that their bond is stronger than ever.